All right. We are back with another episode of the Roto Street Dynasty Dive. Chase MG, Dane, our main man. As always, I'm Roto Street Emery, and today we're joined by Jackson Barrett, Steeler fan. Is that legally in your last name, or is it just Barrett?
Don't think it's legally part of my name, but definitely been a Steelers fan for a long time. So I don't know how much that impacts my dynasty opinions, but Steelers fan for sure.
All righty. Well, it's good to have you on. And today, our main sort of goal here is to break down Dane's Superflex rankings that came out a week or so ago. We're going to check in with those, get a huge breakdown on different values there, a whole bunch of notes. It's good to be back. What's going on, Dane? You ready for this?
Oh, yeah, I think there was like 335 players in these rankings. I don't know if I could ever be 100% ready to, avoid taking a beating on at least one of these guys. But yeah, this is good. You gotta ask questions 24/7 to keep these things fresh. And so they opened up a couple weeks ago now, and I really haven't tweaked them since then. There's been a few things going on, but we'll have to dive in and see if I'm crazy anywhere. I'm looking forward to looking at a player and going, wow, what was I thinking?
Right.
Because why not? Why not? I got them up and ready. I don't have I don't have them off the website. I went ahead and I brought them up from Fantasy Pros from the site itself, so I can just adjust them in real time if needed. Because why not?
Yeah, exactly. A live editing session here. All right, so let's get into it. They're broken down in, I want to say, 14 separate tiers. I mean, that's ranging anywhere from 3 first-round picks and more to an unrostered waiver wire edition here. So Superflex rankings, half PPR, no tight end premium. The same sort of rules that we run for the Roto Street Journal Dynasty. And here's our list up right now. 14 tiers is pretty in depth, and I would like to sort of see where you break down your different tiers here. Obviously, there's going to be guys that are worth 3 first-round picks, but how did you come about this whole sort of ranking system here?
So first, I debated between setting it up like a startup draft or doing trade value tiers. And startup rankings they're a little off to me inherently because you end up you look at a site that does that, and then they give you a view of how the rosters shake out, and the rosters look weird. Like, why is this guy taking 3 tight ends in a row over here? So I couldn't really get into that, and I would become too obsessed with making sure the teams fell in a way that made sense if you went down the rankings and drafted and stuff. So this way seems like it's better because it's a little bit more general, I guess. You're not as you get down, it gets I think a little more particular when we're talking about a second rounder. I think the kind of area gets a little smaller, not smaller. Anyway, ignore that point. But yeah, just I don't want to say too general. General might be the wrong word, but I think rankings are a little tough to begin with because they're so case by case basis, and so the trade value tiers allowed me to attempt anyway to, in a vacuum, say this is kind of what I would expect to buy and sell a player for. And so it's kind of also going off of Jackson's dynasty value trade chart. I know he's got some 4+ firsts in there. I think I've seen, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't know if I could go any higher than 3+ firsts. But yeah, when you got say the two first, or go down to the tier 8, the first minus compared to the second plus. Clearly, that just means you're closer to one or the other. And like where exactly that cuts off is a little subjective too. So it was a little tough to try to figure out how exactly I wanted to do rankings, just because of the case by case thing. And I think that's about it for the trade value part. Like when you get into a particular player, it can kind of get a little wild, I think, even depending on if you're a rebuilder or contender and stuff like that. So I tried to find that middle ground. And then as far as like any other points after that, I think that's about it for the trade value tiers, just like the foundational thinking of that aspect of it.
And Jackson, is that the same for you when you make your sort of trade value charts? Do you put it in, obviously it's in tiers like this, but are you sort of thinking in a vacuum, or just trying to get your list as, sort of straightforward as possible?
Yeah, I think you have to always consider the situation. Like, obviously, some players are going to have more value for contenders, and some are going to have more value for rebuilders. But, like you said, I think it makes sense to kind of take like a more general view if you can. So, like, even if Davante Adams might not be very useful directly to a rebuilder, then he obviously still has trade value. So, I think there's a lot of situations where, like, within a tier, you might prefer one player over the other based on situation. But typically, like, regardless of situation, I would prefer a tier above a player and a tier below.
Okay. Got it. And as this is Dynasty, there's always an age sort of discrepancy where we run into where, do you take the age and the production, or do you take the youth and the projected value, the future value there? Dane, do you want to pull up your list and we can talk about your sort of evaluation of age and where that left you with your rankings?
Yes, we can pull them up. That's the overall. So we need some Superflex action. Yeah, I mean, as far as age goes, like, just as part of the whole thing of trying to predict the future, like you're paying attention to what the normal like arcs are as far as age for different positions stuff, but there's always going to be outliers. And so the question you always got to ask yourself is, who are they? Who are these outliers? Like you saw from the notes before, like I consider like Davante Adams somebody who's not really, the age curve doesn't matter as much to him as much as it does to Keenan Allen, like a Tyler Lockett. And this really isn't like diving into some real deep analytics or anything here. This is just kind of subjective. This is some eye test stuff, and just watching how they play and trying to pick up what kind of game theirs is, and seeing if it's a good one to project out and see if they go longer than most players that age do before they start dropping off. So that's really it for the age thing. Like, what's the so when you say versus production, is that like how they did the previous season or the current season? Like, is that?
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to roll into past production combined with the age and sort of predict, right? And so if that's all future feedback, or what future looks you're going to be getting from a guy like that. I mean, production-wise, sort of just like, yeah, their projections. I think it would be better stated age versus like production as a vet versus the the quality of and the the sort of what is it, the hope you can get from a younger sort of guy there. That's more of what I meant. And that's the same for you there in your trade projections, Jackson, right? It's got to be age has to be a huge factor in that, because very few people will want to trade multiple first round picks for a guy, even a wide receiver who's 28 or 29, a running back that's 26, 27. So that's got to factor in there. Does your thinking really deviate from Dane's in that aspect?
I don't really try to project as much subjectively decline. I try to use more, I guess, production, age, and then current market value, I would say, are the three main inputs into my rankings, because I am not smart enough to figure out which players are going to age better or worse in general. Like, I think maybe there could be a few cases where you could argue, but just not something I really consider that much.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if any of us surprised that Derrick Henry's still going like he is, because it's Derrick Henry,
Yeah.
But in general, yeah, I don't know how you can get a real good beat on who's going to last longer than other players at their position and age.
Gotcha. And then sort of the big, the news that's swirling around the NFL right now. This has been the summer of the running back holdout. The three guys that I brought up were Josh Jacobs, Dalvin Cook, and Ezekiel Elliott. How much of that sort of uncertainty went into your rankings? Did the Josh Jacobs, the fact that he is now at least reported to make it to camp and be ready by week 1, but previous to 3 or 4 days ago, Josh Jacobs was not going to be anywhere near Las Vegas and playing for the Raiders. How did the whole contract situation with running backs in general, how did that really affect what your rankings were?
Yeah, so Jacobs was like a little bit, but it wasn't a ton, because I feel like, and this is some more subjectivity, but if I'm in the head of one of these guys, I don't want the Le'Veon Bell thing to play out for me. I want to stay away from that. Le'Veon Bell has recently said he regretted doing that. So I just don't know how much power, no matter what these backs do, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, I really just don't know how much leverage they have before they're just hurting themselves. And so that kind of keeps me from affecting the rankings really, really all that much.
Yep. Similarly with the Jonathan Taylor news that came out, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, that he has been given permission to seek a trade. Would you have Jonathan Taylor as the 15th overall Superflex Dynasty asset? Does any of this news move him below guys that you have in that same tier with him, that the second tier there?
Well, this would be, so the Jonathan Taylor is more like, we don't know where he's going yet, and so this is about Jonathan Taylor's value at this moment. Mm-hmm. And so I've got him in the 3 first minus right now, and it's really hard to adjust him all that much if we don't know where he's going. And when I'm thinking, okay, how much am I expecting to have to pay to get him from your team, Emery? I don't know why you would drop your price just because of that uncertainty. But maybe that's me, and maybe the market in general is different, and there are players out there who's got JT and they're dropping his value and they're taking less. But that's just where I'm at, and that's kind of how I project to any team that I might be dealing with. Is that why would they really drop the value of JT right now significantly when he could go somewhere. Like if he ends up in Miami and you don't know what his usage is going to be like, it could be just as much as it was in Indy. You know, why would you drop that value when you don't really know that value, when the value is going to actually drop that much? Like in these kind of situations, like say another team that's like, I don't know, pretty terrible, to put your team in there as an example, whatever you want. Just say they're a terrible team, and if JT gets traded there, it's going to really hamper his efficiency because the team is just bad. The surrounding team's bad. Like in that case, what do? Do you drop his value like halfway to what his value would be if he was actually on that team, just because of that uncertainty? Like I think in that scenario, I'm not even going to that halfway point. And maybe that's just a product of the experiences I've had playing Dynasty so far, where I feel like if JT all of a sudden gets traded to this terrible team and then his value drops a bunch, I think I'm still comfortable enough taking that L, having his value in my own mind not really drop all that much, and just kind of taking that L. I definitely don't want to drop someone's value too much and then see him, blow up for a different team. That I would rather take the former scenario there.
Yeah,
maybe that's just me.
It's an interesting spot, especially with a guy like Jonathan Taylor, and Josh Jacobs too, to a lesser extent. But if you're a Jonathan Taylor owner here, you sort of have to assume that this would be his floor, and so you would be trading at the lowest value currently. But then, like you said, say he goes to a team that uses a little bit more of a committee backfield, and then his value's slightly less. I mean, that's sort of what I was picking up, right? Like if you don't know the future landing spot there, and so as an owner, this would be the holding situation, right? You do not want to trade Jonathan Taylor now because there's the opportunity for a better situation. Is that's sort of what I'm picking up, right? Like,
yeah, and then just being comfortable with taking the L if it didn't work out that way. And now at that point now we're just getting into personal preference.
Yeah. And that sort of backs up your statement saying that he can't really move anywhere now on that tier, because you just don't know. Jackson, does that for your rankings and your understanding and looking at this list here, does that the uncertainty change anything for you? The unknown landing spot, if even a trade happens. I mean, he could sit here and be disgruntled in Indy for a year and then go somewhere else. Does the uncertainty sort of change your value of Jonathan Taylor in your traded charts?
So I think the last time I updated it was kind of before any of the main Jonathan Taylor news came out, but I'll say I do think there's a reasonable chance that the Colts just don't trade him because they don't get the right offer. But I would also say that unless he goes to a team with an already established really good running back, which I don't know why he would, because why would you trade for Jonathan Taylor if you had one of those guys? Then I'm not sure the situation could get worse than the Colts for this year, because maybe Anthony Richardson eventually is a good quarterback, but rookie quarterbacks and mobile quarterbacks are generally bad for running back production in the current year. So I think the only main concern I would have is he doesn't necessarily have an incentive to play all 16 or all 17 games if he doesn't get a new contract. Because if he gets a mild ankle injury or something in week 8, like maybe he would play through it if he was on a guaranteed contract for the long term, but maybe he decides that it's not worth it given the contract situation and the team situation.
Right. Okay.
So I guess to answer, I wouldn't really move him down significantly though, because I don't think he's going to go to a significantly worse situation.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think that there is a pretty likely chance that he doesn't leave Indy as well. I mean, he's sort of going to be the one who sets the precedent for the next slew of running back contracts, right? Because if he does get traded, someone is going to value him at, I mean, a first round pick maybe, or a second rounder. I know Indy's asking for a first, but the team that does, or if a team ends up trading a first for him, they're giving up a first round pick, and they're also going to have to do that in hopes to sign him long term, right? And so he'll sort of be the first man through the door in terms of this next sort of round of contracts, and that's what you have to sort of think about with the other 29 teams in the league, that they're also weighing the fact that A, we'll have to give up a coveted pick, and B, we're going to have to, sort of set the market in the next year.
This is a weird time too, because I feel like all this contract stuff just in general in the league, I feel like it just like can't continue. Maybe it can, maybe it can just be just like this weird chaos every year, moving forward for however long. But I feel like this is like a valley where it has to come back out of it, and there has to be some normalization to the running back position. And so when I think about these guys, Jacobs, JT, J.K. Dobbins to an extent, like I feel like when I'm thinking about rankings and how the future is going to go, just with the running back position in general, I feel like this can't stay the norm. Like I said, maybe it can, but that's just kind of where I'm at, and to where I look at when I'm making rankings. I'm just kind of thinking there's going to be some normalization where it's got to level out here at some point, where we don't have to think about this so much as a factor when we're trying to construct some dynasty rosters and figure out trade values and stuff. But maybe that's just me, but that's another part of me really not giving a whole lot of credence in general to these contract situations, because I just feel like it's short term. But what do I know?
Yeah, same here. Okay, so when you're putting this together, it took a while, obviously, and what were some of the biggest sort of like not roadblocks, but decisions you had to make putting one guy higher than another? Do you have anything that really stood out to you? Because I know that I had a couple in my thinking, especially just in the positional sort of aspect of it too.
Well, just taking a look here, I didn't take a hard look in thinking about that question. I think first off is probably one of the more polarizing ones is Kyler Murray, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
There's when we get into like week 2 and week 3 of the season, this thing could just move all around in general. So, this is about at this moment, and how much I think that the Cards really are trying to go after like Caleb Williams in 24. That's something I'm still kind of trying to get a beat on, and I'm not completely sold on. So, how does that really change? How does that uncertainty, affect the rankings? I'm still kind of going off of more past than future than when I'm thinking about Kyler Murray still. And, as the season goes along, maybe the vibe will change. But I think at this point, again, if I have Kyler Murray, or I'm trying to trade for Kyler Murray, how much am I really expecting somebody to drop his value, or for me to drop his value? When the Cardinals, 2023 tank season is not quite, playing itself out in real time yet. So, obviously you get a chance, you can try to buy low on Kyler Murray, then, go get it. And I don't know if we want to dive into Jackson's particular thoughts here now, because we have a trade to bring up from the Ruther Street Superflex Dynasty League later on. But I mean, if we want to go off on a tangent here about the one Jackson had with Sean Keegs, I believe it was just you got Kyler Murray for Jared Goff and a 2024 first. Was that what that was?
Yeah. So I guess the main logic of that was just like, obviously I would prefer to have Kyler over Goff, but at the same time, like, I'm expecting my 2024 first to be fairly late because, like, you never know exactly where it's going to end up. And, like, most likely any one given pick isn't going to be like the 112 because there's just so much variance and you can't really predict who's going to win very effectively before the season. But, like, I would be very surprised if it wasn't at least a playoff pick. And then looking at, like, the end of the first round this year, like, if you're getting stuck with like the 110, 111, 112, that's just not a very good spot to be. I don't think, like, once the pick actually ends up there. So, like, I would prefer to have that 2024 first over someone like A-Chain, but, like, worst case scenario, I would get stuck with him and it's like the pick's like almost worthless in terms of like a normal first. So I just think that, like, Kyler's elite production history was worth moving on from Goff, who was very solid last year, but he's also been bad in other years. So you're just not entirely sure what you're going to get from him moving forward. And Kyler obviously has uncertainty too, but I think the ceiling's just a lot higher there.
Yeah, and you're also buying at the absolute lowest point here with all the speculation this offseason with the Cardinals looking to get into the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. Plus, he's coming back from an ACL injury, which today is not as bad as it could be like 6 or 8 years ago, but still unsure how quickly he'll rebound. And so, yeah, you bought at his absolute lowest floor. And perhaps, again, sort of like the Jonathan Taylor situation, there are other franchises looking for a starting quarterback, a franchise quarterback, one that will be part of their plan moving forward for the next handful of years. How long his contract was? He got like a 6 or 7 year deal last year, along with Cliff Kingsbury, correct?
Yeah, I think he has like 3 or 4 years left on this contract. But, like, even if he gets traded from a dynasty perspective, I don't really care that much because it's not like he's going to not be starting somewhere.
Right.
And I don't think the Cardinals are like some incredible situation right now or something. Like, they're probably below average.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so similar to that Jonathan Taylor thing where he could find a new spot. There are teams without a quarterback that have better built rosters around them and could be in the sweepstakes for a quarterback. And so, yeah, I think that the value is only up following his recovery and whatever plays out with Arizona this year.
Yeah, and I think the one other thing too is it probably makes sense to try to buy Kyler if you're either tanking or if you have 2 already established quarterbacks, which I did. So I can just wait it out until he comes back. Like, I'm not worried if he comes back week 1. Like, it doesn't look like he's going to, but even if he has to wait like halfway through the season, then that would be fine for my situation. So that was another factor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kyler's got signed that 5-year contract. He's not a free agent until 2029. So
Look at that.
There's a $0 dead cap hit in 2028 for whoever has him by then.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So just getting back to the original sort of thought here, that was your main sort of conundrum in finding a spot and assigning a value to someone was Kyler Murray. Were there any other positions or players that stood out to you?
Well, as I was going down the list here, I saw James Cook. He was a tough one because he's gotten a lot of hype, but the Bills have been pretty good about deploying a 2.5 running back committee basically during Josh Allen's tenure, and so it was kind of hard to believe the hype. So it's hard to go off of preseason coach speak, but it got to me a little bit, over the past week or two. The coach was talking about how he kind of has like 3-down talent. I can't remember. I think it was the OC, and I can't remember his exact words now. So, but that was good. So, yeah, it's hard to. I can't reference that, but just in general, following the camp buzz, moved him up my rankings. He wasn't tier 6 here, like a week ago. But that one was just in general, it was tough because he's already like kind of an undersized back too. So when you're thinking about like a workhorse role for somebody, you're not everybody was Chris Johnson, right? So he would be kind of an outlier in that respect if he got a big workload. So that was another thing that was tough. And obviously he's talented, you can't deny that. And what he can do if you can get him out in space. So that's James Cook might be one that and maybe he stays right there once the season starts and we see how he's used. But he in particular, he was a tough one to gauge. And then if we want to talk about Zeke and Dalvin Cook here, Ramondre Stevenson was in general a tough one to gauge. One of the big reasons being that he was a Patriot, and we're totally familiar with Bellatrix, and so when Zeke got signed, when Cook got signed, Cook's situation was different, but when it came to Zeke, you see, I tweeted this out, and this was an unironic tweet. These Breece Hall and Ramondre Stevenson didn't drop at all in my rankings because Bellatrix was baked into his value to me already. Yeah. So it's not. I'm a little surprised he went after Zeke. Like another guy in our league, Rich, said that was that stuck with me. Zeke is like a recycled beer can. Like I don't know. When the season gets going, I guess we'll see Zeke in action and see if he's like, really worth bringing in. We've seen some weird stuff out of Bill Belichick, last year in particular, just with his coaching staff. So you can't rule out that even if Zeke is total sludge out there, that he's gonna get like looks for the Patriots and eat into Ramondre's workload a little bit. But it's hard to imagine it being a ton. And so there's another spot where I could be wrong. Like maybe Zeke really takes a big chunk, but it's really hard to picture. So that's why Ramondre didn't drop for me there. And then Breece Hall and the Dalvin Cook situation. To me, Dalvin Cook is Michael Carter this year. Basically, that's I don't really need to get more specific than that. To me, I just think he's the RB2 there, and with these guys coming back from ACLs, seems like they're like medical science is always getting better, right? And sports medicine too, and so these guys coming back from ACLs, I feel like basically whenever you hear a guy coming back, they're coming back ahead of schedule, and what little we've seen with Breece Hall seems like maybe he's a little slow to start off the season, but you get to the halfway point, I don't see why he can't be 100%. And he was in there with Michael Carter too for a good amount of time that he was in there, and he was still putting up big numbers. I'm not really worried about it. Breece Hall's still RB2 to me, and as far as my dynasty rankings go.
Sure. Okay. Jackson, when you looked over this ranking today, and when it came out, did your trade chart sort of emulate this overall rankings, or were there any huge sort of differences between the two?
I mean, obviously there's going to be some differences, but I feel like for the most part, I think we're kind of generally on the same page with values. Like, you can obviously compare individual players if you want, but we'll have like different opinions on different players. But I think like in terms of the tier layout, yeah, it's pretty similar.
Got it. Okay. And I think you bring up a good point. The tier rankings are mainly what we're looking at here, and I think the discrepancies that I had were just personal opinion on certain players and stuff. And the big one that sort of I was looking at was your quarterback rankings. I know that the ECR on that first tier is a little bit jumbled. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's different. Do you want to speak on, I guess, the way that you put your quarterbacks in there and your just sort of personal preference to those? Or, I mean, they're all in the same tier there, but it's an interesting list, and I think I would have done it differently, but I will be doing it differently. But that is, again, like we said, it's just personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you want to particularly dive into it, or if you have like particular points about it, but like, Joe Burrow is the big thing with him is, he doesn't use the legs, right? Like half these guys do. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So among that top 7, like what's the big one? Do you have like a top? Is it top 7 for you too, or no?
The big one was Joe Burrow, and in just looking at that, I am higher on Lamar and lower on Trevor Lawrence, but those are the 7. There's no denying that. Like, Justin Fields is correctly not in this tier. Deshaun Watson plays for the Cleveland Browns. We can hammer that whole Browns take into the ground, but much to your chagrin, I would imagine. But Joe Burrow was just the main one that stuck out to me, and your reasoning, the fact that he doesn't run the ball that often is certainly fair.
Yeah, basically, I feel like Justin Herbert, and Kellen Moore could be a match made in heaven, possibly. Like that's the ceiling there. And then Trevor Lawrence is more of a kind of, it's an ascending offense there, so we don't really know exactly where that's going to top out. I feel like Joe Burrow, we can't really. I don't know how much more can peek out with Joe Burrow compared to what we've already seen. I'm not sure what year in the league he is now. I think it's 3rd or 4th year. I don't know. But yeah, like it could, like he's got Chase, he's got Higgins, but for some reason the ceiling is just it's close. It is close, but I just kind of think the ceiling is a little lower compared to these other 6.
Sure. Yeah.
He's clearly he's a clear tier above. Like you have Fields and Watson for me right now. Depending on how much Fields evolves as a passer going forward, Fields could be number 7, over him too, because of the rushing usage. So.
Sure. So I think a lot of this is we're taking the value of a first round pick here, right? Which is super subjective and case by case sort of situation here. And there are obvious guys like your tier 1s and even tier 2 and 3s that are worth a boatload of picks. They're worth mortgaging your future on. And so I just wanted to sort of pick your brain on, I guess to a degree, like how these guys not how they got in these tiers, but just sort of like your thought process on, I guess maybe not the top the top tiers aren't going to be the best, but like say two first rounders to like a first plus, that sort of area there. What was your thinking about that? Which tier was it again? I'm sorry.
Let's check and make sure. So, difference between tier 5 and 6. So,
yeah, from tier 5 to tier 7, yeah, or maybe 8. You're thinking there. What differentiates a guy being worth a first round and a little bit more versus like two first rounders? How much value are we putting on this first round pick?
So if we want to go, it's like the tier. If we just go straight tier 7, just first round pick. If we start with Jerry Jeudy, Judy's ceiling is higher, but like last year in the Russell Wilson scenario, I think dropped it. I think a year ago, Judy's definitely worth more than a first. And when you think about what are you getting with a first round pick? Like what's the range in the rookie draft? Either the 101 is possibly like a generational talent kind of guy. Some years. Either way, you're getting like a really, really good player, no matter what, at the 101. And then by the time you get to the 112, like Jackson said earlier, you're getting to guys who are, who could possibly, not end up being fantasy relevant, really. There's an athletic article by Jeff Haverlack, who I am a fan of because he actually leaves notes on Dynasty League football when he ranks players. So I greatly appreciate that little bit of like what he was thinking, for each player that he ranks. And he went back through like the past like 5, Dynasty rookie drafts and labeled like, who were hits, who were busts, who were like more in the middle and stuff like that. And, that stuff's really valuable because it's, you really get to see where most guys who now we know they're 4 or 5 years in the league where we kind of know what they are, but you got to remember what they were when they were coming out of the draft and where the market had them.
Yeah,
and,
right.
You see some of these first round picks bust, and you got to consider that when you're valuing a first round pick in general. So, like Jackson said with his, Kyler Murray for Goff in a 2024 first trade, like if that's a late first, is it a lock that you're getting a guy that you're going to be putting in your starting lineup? And sometimes no. So that has to go into your thinking. So just from going from 101 to 112 is such a world apart to begin with. And now you got to add in their players' age, their team situations, what their future might look like. Are they going to be on different teams? Do you just straight up bet on talent? When you're going forward, like you probably do. You try not, or at least I try not to fall too much into like, oh, a guy's injury prone. Like that can get you in trouble. Like Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, they were injured just not like all the time for a good 2-3 year stretch, but they both had a real solid year last year. Like it was like some kind of back to normal thing, almost back to like 2018 and shit. So, you already have that 101 to 112 world of difference. And now you look at like Jerry Jeudy, I'd kind of like to move him up. I still think he's like a really great route runner. Like I think if the offense he's in is clicking, if Russell Wilson, does work it out with Sean Payton and he gets some form back and he's at least close to what a lot of people thought he was going to be when he first went to Denver, like Judy's getting moved up these rankings, but so much of the present is baked in here to where, you gotta the floor with Russell Wilson is still there to where, you got to kind of find the middle ground with that. So I like right off the bat here, Jerry Jeudy today, someone offers you Jerry Jeudy, how much are you expecting? How pick just solely pick wise, what are you expecting to give up for Jerry Jeudy?
I think you're right with the tier here. He could go up another to me because I don't know how many people would do Jerry Jeudy straight up for a first round pick. It again would then have to take into consideration where you're expecting that first to land in the following rookie draft. But it's a great argument for having these tiers, for having as many tiers. And I know that I jokingly said it was very lengthy at the beginning, but it creates a very comprehensive sort of breakdown for guys that are right on the edges of those places, like that could move up depending on the sort of extra outlier things, such as the landing spot of that future first. One thing that I wanted to bring up when we're talking about valuing guys for, like, say even just a single first, their landing spot in the previous year in their respective rookie drafts, does that have any impact on your thinking either? Do you like, oh, well, I used a first round pick on him 3 years ago, which I would assume Jerry Jeudy was. Would you want to just then rinse and reuse for another first? I know the whole like sort of Reddit argument is like, wow, I traded Justin Jefferson for 3 first round picks with the chance that maybe one of them is the next Justin Jefferson, things like that, because say Jerry Jeudy, Jordan Addison, Dalton Kincaid, Joe Mixon, these guys, they were all first round picks in their rookie drafts. Does that sort of affect your value when you're saying like when you're trying to value your first round pick in a trade or something like that?
So what you're saying is that it's possible that there's this parallel universe where instead of dropping Allen Robinson, I'm waiting to get my first for him. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, it's got to come back. No. I'm just saying, does your like history or the player's history draft wise, does that come into your sort of thought process when you are attaching first round picks to a trade and something like this?
I don't see how it could do anything but hurt your roster construction, thinking that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you on the same page there, Jackson? I think it's pretty much I don't know that there's really much more to it than that. I'm trying to think of a scenario where I would try to hang on somebody's value just because, say, I paid a lot to get them. I can't see that happening.
I mean, I think it could potentially be useful if you want to trade for a specific player and you know that player was drafted as a first round pick the year before, then maybe the other manager isn't going to be as willing to give him up for less than the first just because of that anchoring bias. But yeah, and when you're valuing your own players, then I don't think where they were drafted in the rookie draft is super important.
Sure. Okay. And I guess my question was more about in terms of a trade, like trading your pick for someone who was in that first round. I mean, you brought up, Dan, you couldn't think of a guy, but I mean, the last 2 or 3 years, you could say Clyde Edwards-Helaire. When he came out, the buzz around Clyde when he got drafted to the Chiefs after they won the Super Bowl without a real running back. He was 1-1 in a lot of situations.
Mm-hmm.
I could imagine that there are scenarios like that where Clyde owners didn't want to give it up to give him up for something down the line, just because he was the number 1 overall pick in a lot of rookie drafts. That was sort of more of what I was aiming my question at. Can you sort of go ahead.
Maybe that's happening out there more than I would think it is. Because especially with I again went back to Allen Robinson in my mind, but he was like 29 already, I think, or 28 or 29, at this time last year. And so I would say that just personally, I think I held out hope for like maybe 5 or 6 weeks into the season with Allen Robinson, and maybe maybe he's just like getting used to the offense, blah. But I feel like I don't even know if we hit halfway, into the season to where I'm like, man, this wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
And so when you bring up Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I think maybe if there was an argument to keep his value up and kind of try to keep that energy going from when he was a top of the first round rookie pick, it was that I think the Brian Westbrook was a big comparison to Edwards-Helaire, and I think Brian Westbrook I don't think had a real solid rookie season himself, and I think so that there was still that air going on, at least going into Edwards-Helaire's second year. But it's hard to say because I feel like I didn't have him in Dynasty, so that's a tough one. We'd have to ask Truth about that one, I guess. But
Sure.
I just kind of think like once the season gets started and you're like past the quarter mark of the season, that trumps rookie draft capital, I would think. Like you're looking at the results on the field and then trying to, you're trying to say, Edwards-Helaire as a rookie. Like, is it just because he's a rookie? I don't know. Mahomes and that Chiefs offense was rolling, so it's not like the offense was, an ascending one or whatever, where you thought the surrounding talent might improve and then CEH would improve. Like, no, it's kind of like you're all set up, bro. It's time to go. So, I really don't know how much I really can't see rookie draft. I certainly can't see rookie draft capital being a factor in how guys and how players value their team more than a year, for sure.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly what that cutoff point is, because I kind of feel like it's earlier, but maybe not, because like the logic that went into CEH being a top rookie first round pick, like that logic can carry over. Like it's the logic that went into the pick that can carry over. Like, oh, Brian Westbrook didn't have a great rookie year either, blah blah blah. Like so like not solely the pick itself, but like the logic that went into it. But part of that logic was that it was the Chiefs offense and he was going to be able to eat, and then he didn't. So I feel like in his case that you have to take your L there pretty quickly, or else you're not doing yourself any favors.
Sure. All right. I guess that brings us to our last segment, which is talking a little bit about rebuilding versus contending, and where you put when is it time to trade a first round pick? When is it time to recoup a few assets? And I know Jackson, our most recent trade from a couple days ago is a pretty decent example of this. So it was Amari Cooper and Marcus Mariota for my 2026 first rounder. I'll ask you. You basically said that there were too many starters on your roster, which is a pretty great problem to have. So were you just looking to get back at least a first round pick? Just sort of cull the herd a little bit and get what you can get, or okay. So what's the sort of like long term plan with that?
So Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have like a lot of guys that I feel like are in starter range, and I mean, even without Cooper, like a lot of those guys are aging. Like I have McCaffrey, Eckler, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen. Like those guys probably aren't going to last that much longer. Like hopefully they make it through this year and maybe like 1 or 2 other years. But like eventually I'm going to run into a problem where I don't have enough starters and I'm going to need assets in the future to get more starters.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I would prefer later to have like additional flexibility than have Amari Cooper now, who like arguably I wouldn't even be able to start. And I also think that like now that I have that first round pick, like it doesn't necessarily mean that I can't trade that first round pick for a different Amari Cooper or like someone that essentially fills that role if I need to.
Right.
And it might not be like the easiest to trade that specific 26 pick, but I have other picks in 2025 and then some seconds in 2024 that I feel like I can move quicker if I need depth. So I just feel like that first round pick gives me more flexibility in the future because like first round picks are almost like cash. Like anyone's going to be interested in them at pretty much any time. And like if I waited another year or two on Amari Cooper, yeah, it would be nice to have the production now, but this might have been my last chance to sell him for a first, like depending on what happens this year, or like he could get hurt tomorrow or something, and then I don't have that chance.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think just like the idea that first round picks are like cash essentially, and I didn't need more production in my lineup right now, so I'd prefer the cash that's not going to like get injured or lose value between now and when I need to spend it.
Sure. And I think I am on the exact opposite boat from you. In my opinion, there's a pretty small window for my roster. And one more piece could be that piece. There's a lot of time between now and 2026. So my thinking beyond that was let's go all in. I mean, I think Dane and our trade to swap quarterbacks, and you got a couple picks from it. It sort of set our teams in motion. I've pushed the chips in, and adding Amari Cooper to an older roster, but a few younger guys like JT and Jalen Hurts and J.K. Dobbins and things like that. DJ Moore is not too old. It's well worth a pick 3 years from now, 3 years from now to get immediate production. You are right in saying that there's a little bit of unknown with Amari Cooper being, 29 now?
I think so.
Yeah, on a Browns team that underperformed last year, where they added Elijah Moore. Hopefully Deshaun Watson becomes a little bit more like himself, but that means that there's going to be there's less targets now for Amari Cooper. But I think the main thing for me was getting one more guy that can start. I don't really feel comfortable trotting out Juju and David Montgomery every week. That's not a boat I'd like to be in. So yeah, that was mainly my thinking. It's a win now approach versus a very different situation for you.
Yeah, I'm obviously still trying to win, but I think like what we talked about, the value of the first round pick, like the value of the pick doesn't necessarily even have to be that related to like which rookies you can actually select with it, because if you can trade out of the rookie draft like close to the time the actual draft happens for a vet or like something else that you need, then you don't have to worry about the specific bust rates or hit rates or whatever of the pick. So like we've had 2 rookie drafts now, and I've I have not made a single rookie pick, but I've traded like tons of rookie picks, and now I have some extra firsts that like maybe I'll make the picks, maybe I won't, but at the very least I can trade them for some value later is my main thinking.
Mm-hmm. I do. I like the cash and that the cash sort of similarity. It is like just keeping an asset that's never going to break, that will always retain X amount of value, especially one that's future off, right? Like there's so much unknown from now and 2026 that players could go down, players could retire. We just saw Corey Davis retire yesterday at 28 after signing getting his nice little bag during the off season. Things happen so quickly. That first round pick is not going to it's not going to depreciate in any sort of manner. Dane, I would like to get your third party. You haven't been able to do this yet. You haven't been the observer to any of this.
Yeah, I think to this point, I was over half of the offseason trades what I was a part of in the RSJ Dynasty League. So now I'm at 10 out of 20, I think. Or no, Duck and Jackson had that $1 flop, so I'm 10 for 21. But so the question that entered my mind when I first saw the trade was: Is this a kicking the can down the road kind of trade for you, Emery?
For me?
Yeah.
Will you elaborate just a bit?
Well, now we're at a spot. You're getting a guy who's 29, and you're giving up a first round pick in 3 years from now. So your team's older, and it was already in kind of an aging contender, and so now you just went more in that direction. And so I don't know how much. This is episode 10 here, and I guess I'm still not quite sure how much you're trying to salvage the future with your moves, or is that just like not as much of a priority?
What I'm hoping to do is be able to get to compete with a Jackson level team this year and next year. Banners fly forever, so it would be nice. It would be nice to win this year, and like I said earlier, that this window is closing. There may be a fire sale. I think that's what you're alluding to, is that if this doesn't work out in the next year or two, then this team would look drastically different. I just think that there's a closing window now with this roster that I've compiled here, and something's got to give. It's either puts me over the hump to win a playoff game, or it sends me down the hole of a rebuild. Go ahead.
So then I got to ask Jackson, was it the possibility in your mind when you made this trade that age cliff could happen with Emery's team, and he's going to have to fire sale the whole thing, and then so by the time 2026 rolls around, he's a rebuilder, and that first is early?
Yeah, for sure. Like obviously that's a possibility. Like there's guys like Mixon, Cobb, Kittle. Like you just don't know whether those guys are going to be there 3 years from now or not. Like they could for sure, but it's just tough to predict. And then the fact that he traded his 24 first, and he still has his 25 first, but I think that's the only first he has in the next 3 years. So that's going to give him limited flexibility to like improve his team in the future. So like, I think I could definitely lose this trade if Amari Cooper smashes this year and he finds a way to make the 26 first not very good. But actually, I'm curious though, because I offered you the exact same trade for the 25 first, like, and the 26 first at the same time, and you could just pick one. So I'm curious, like, why you picked the 26.
I think Dane was right. I think I was kicking the can a little bit. Was hoping I haven't had a first round pick in either of these of our rookie drafts. And I think I just because it's a little bit closer, that's the only value I put the 25 ahead of the 26. If I really needed to make a move that would sort of be a stopgap from this sort of roster configuration to a future one in 3 years that holds maybe 2 or 3 of these guys, I would like to be able to have that 25 first to give me one little extra oomph for extending a year or two out of the following window that my team would have, hoping to keep the no, I wouldn't say core, but the sort of build with Jalen Hurts, Jonathan Taylor, DJ Moore, maybe J.K. Dobbins, probably not. I'm hoping to be able to keep that throughout the end of this window and then into the next whatever window I've got. That's my main focus, mainly just kicking the can. You're right, Dane. And to have a little bit more flexibility in the immediate future.
We're talking about the difference between 25 first and a 26 first in this trade context. But what about in a vacuum? Because I always thought it was interesting the values that trade calculators will put on first rounders from different years, and the first rounders, the value will go down for future years. Like how much credence do you guys give that the particular values that you see out of that? Because when I think of like if you keep going down to the years, like the extreme case is what, like a 2048 first is worth Samaje Perine. Like, yeah, if you want to give me a 2048 first, take him. Shit, why wouldn't I? Like, so that's eventually the value is absurdly close with players who have no business ever touching the value of a first. So how much credence do you guys give, Jackson? How much credence do you guys give the idea that the firsts are dropping value as the years go on, and like how much value in a vacuum is it actually dropping to you?
So it sounds kind of weird, but I feel like almost the biggest factor in that is how confident are you that your league's not going to fold before you can get the first? Because like obviously if the league folded like 2 years from now, then like that's a complete smash win for Emery. But I kind of feel like assuming like the league's going to last like well beyond whatever first you're talking about, I kind of feel like the later firsts are like undervalued a little bit. Like sometimes you're going to be in situations where you need to spend it now to contend. But if you're not, like, to be honest, like the 26 first versus the having it in 25, I don't think is really going to make any difference for me because I have other picks before then that I can sell, like if I need to sell them quickly. So like I would have valued his 25 first and 26 first like about the same personally, because I feel like there's a better chance that the 26 first is good. And maybe it loses a little bit of value because it's later, but
I agree with you there. And I think, again, to add to my answer to your question, Derek Carr is older. I believe he's 34. I'm going to have to get a second quarterback at some point. And I think to have the option in 25 to pick up a young quarterback there, I didn't want to kick that can down the road. I wanted to be able to take a quarterback. I'm probably going to have to with Derek Carr. I think he got 3 years in New Orleans. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so.
I thought it was effectively 2. that he was like guaranteed for.
Okay. So then, yeah, that fits my thinking just as well. I would like to have someone that 25 was theoretically in my head set aside for a quarterback in the rookie draft. Say something comes along. I know I've got Bailey Zappi and Drew Lock, one hell of a stable down there in the taxi squad. But I have some backup now. I have Marcus Mariota, former Heisman winner. People forget that. But yeah, that was mainly just an insurance piece for me, and I appreciate you tossing me a handcuff there. But yeah, I think I in my head had reserved that first for a quarterback. That was my thinking mainly. Didn't want to prolong my suffering with Derek Carr if it comes to that.
So if we go back to my rankings here, I have Amari down in tier 9. Tier 9 is a second plus for me. Mm-hmm. And so might as well talk about what put him there for me. It's the uncertainty of where he's going to be after this year. He's getting paid $20 million, and Deshaun Watson's cap hit is going to go up like $1.5 billion or something like that. So the Browns are going to have to try to find ways to, make space. And I just have a really hard time thinking that they're going to be able to keep Amari, even if it's just some crazy pay cut he takes on his next contract because he wants to stay in Cleveland or something. Like I don't really see it. So now you're going to have, say that happens, Browns let him go. Then you're going to have a 30-year-old receiver, and the uncertainty of where he goes next year, for some reason in Amari's case, matters kind of a lot. I think he's been really quietly good for his career. So when I think about where he could end up, I think one of the most likely scenarios might be like a kind of a Brandon Cooks scenario where he ends up a good wide receiver 2 behind a clear 1. Could also not turn out like that at all. He could go to like the Chiefs or something, and he's probably the alpha there. But this is just kind of gut feeling. Jackson, what is your gut feeling on Amari after this year?
I mean, I think what you said makes sense about like the cap casualty stuff. Like he could go to a different team. Like I didn't move him because I hate Amari Cooper as a player, but like last year was actually kind of weird for him because he had like a 26% target share, which is like significantly better than what he's ever done. Like he's been about a 22% target share guy like his whole career. And like maybe part of that was that the Browns didn't necessarily have like anyone else demanding a huge target share next to him. But I think even if he does replicate that target share this year and he finishes similar to what he did last year, then like you said, going to a different situation would probably make it tougher to maintain that like elite level target share. So yeah, I do agree that like the situation going to a different team could potentially be bad.
Yeah, like the Browns roster makeup last year was interesting because say Amari Cooper like got hurt, like the wide receiver 1 would have been who, like Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like DPJ's cool and stuff, but like that would have been terrible.
Yeah, that would have been ugly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying he had a surprising year last year. He was viable in some situations.
Yeah, but like when it's DPJ behind you, like that was. I'm not surprised I'm not surprised Amari got so many targets, and I'm not really looking for that. So part of the reason I went and got traded for Elijah Moore this year, was that, as I said on this show before, I wasn't really looking to compete in 23. I was more or less building for 24 and beyond. And so when I looked at Elijah Moore, I thought, okay, Amari's probably gone. But for 23, not really expecting big things out of Elijah, really. But in 24, like the guy, he's a first round NFL draft pick who the Browns traded a second for. Like the Browns traded the first 23 draft pick they had to go and get him. Like I feel like he could be the alpha in 24. It ain't happening in 23, but yes, that was more or less my thinking there with Elijah Moore. And they'll add they got like Cedric Tillman now. We'll see how good of a depth he is and stuff, but definitely for 23, like the depth. It's adding Elijah to that wide receiver room is such a big difference to me. For like if Amari gets hurt this time and you got Elijah there now, that's like a world of difference. Like I said, I like Donovan Peoples-Jones, but that was teeter on the brim. I still don't know, and it was weird too because they got Amari for like a fifth. Like what if they didn't even trade for Amari? Like that whole thing was pretty weird for me. I don't know if the Browns front office was thinking like this is kind of a transitionary year, so we're not really worried about it, that kind of thing right now, or what. But the the wide receiver room is much less than scary now, in case injury happens. So, but
that's actually a good point too that you brought up. Like, because I'm pretty sure right after Amari Cooper got traded for that fifth, like I don't think you could have gotten a first for him, like immediately, because Watson wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone was like, "This is going to be a terrible situation." Like, no one wanted Amari Cooper at that point, so that could easily happen again. And then now he's older.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, where do you think? I don't know if you answered the "where is Amari in a year" question, Emery. Where do you think he's at?
I think Amari is going to go the way of. I saw an interesting sort of thread on Reddit about older running backs that just become sort of what's the word?
Recycled beer cans?
No, not that. They'll just be like one year additions to teams that are trying to get over the hump. And I don't think Amari's there yet, but I think he has mercenary. That's the word I was looking for. There were like just like guns for hire. I think the league is positioned in a way where the top dogs are all in the AFC for the most part. And there are 3-ish teams that stand out as the toppest dog. The Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals at the moment. And I think that there's going to be an interesting struggle between those 3 teams where they're all vying for the same guys. And we talk about it all the time, like when someone requests a trade or someone gets is a pending free agent. They're going to be the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Chiefs and the Bills at least are going to be 2 teams that are always looking at receivers and always looking at running backs. They'll be like, oh wow, just imagine him in the Chiefs offense, this sort of thing. I think that in a couple of years, I think Amari Cooper is going to have that style of role. Like, I think we're seeing DeAndre Hopkins get there. We saw Julio Jones try to do that, which petered out very, very quickly. I don't think it was the best for him to go to Tennessee for sure.
Might have been the worst.
Yeah. But that's sort of what I see Amari Cooper being after this age 30 sort of peak cliff we're looking at. I think he'll hold value, like standalone free agent value, to teams that are trying to go. It's sort of like what Odell did with the Rams, like go pick your team, pick your contender, and go help someone win a Super Bowl. I think that's going to be the Amari Cooper timeline in my opinion, and sort of like in my vision for holding Amari at the moment. That's sort of what I see. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, and when I brought up kind of like the going to the Chiefs and being the wide receiver one there possibly in like a year, like that's kind of been going around in the back of my head now. Like, oh man, maybe that could happen. And then maybe he doesn't get a 26% target share, but he's if he's only behind Travis Kelce in targets on the Chiefs, then yeah, you still got your value up there as far as like a first round rookie pick value for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's definitely scenarios where he goes to like a really good situation and then he's just produces for another 4 years or whatever. But I just think that given the situation, I would rather have the first round pick. And then I think one last thing, like I think another decent way to consider trades is like if I already had that extra 26 first and like didn't have Amari Cooper, like I definitely wouldn't move that 26 first now, like in my situation to get Amari Cooper because there's wasn't really any need for it. So I think like sometimes if you think about like if you already have whatever side you're getting, then like would you make the trade the other way can like kind of help you think about trades sometimes and just make it easier to decide.
Sure, yeah, and I think I'm in the same sort of mindset as I don't know if I would trade Amari Cooper for a future first right now, given my position, given the breakdown of my team, the need for immediate production and that sort of thing. I don't know if I would reverse kick the can, to continue to quote Dane there. I wouldn't do that to stock up. I think I would try to ride Amari, into the sunset. Yeah, that's about it.
We got what does the internet say? I don't know how well I can do this here.
Yeah.
The internet says 77% agree that Jackson's side got the better end of the deal. We try to frame these questions so that you're not just thinking, okay, which side of the trade would you do, but which roster benefited more. So I don't know how much the general public of 39 voters are considering that when they're doing that, or they're just voting based on a vacuum. We'll never know. But
it was a rigged election. A rigged vote. Someone's pulling polls out here.
There's still, I think, like maybe 21 hours left on the poll. If you're watching and you feel you haven't voted on that and you feel like doing it, it is still up and still active.
I'm gonna go campaign right now. I'm gonna be firing off tweets. I'll go down to a restaurant and just be like, hey, can you guys vote for me here real quick? No, I won't be doing that.
Can you record it when you do it?
Exactly, yeah. Will you vote on my made-up fantasy football team on my own Twitter account, please? Yeah. No, I won't be doing that.
So, I mean, did you guys have anything you thought was crazy about these rankings over here? Like, as I kind of half expected there to be maybe one or two big ones where you go, okay, bro, explain yourself.
I mean, I don't understand why Eckler is like, he's like 2 or 3 tiers below Chubb.
Let's get up here. Let's see, tier 5. I think this might be another, like uncertainty is like another one of those subjective kind of angles to take too. And, so it's like, it's not surprising that Eckler didn't get, long-term contract, because that's just like the running back market now. So I think uncertainty has gone into these rankings a lot. I mean, age, a factor too, but seeing how much seen how the Chargers utilized Eckler, and in his particular case, the reluctance to kind of give him a contract and more than just this 1 year and whatnot. I don't know how long you keep going with 1-year contracts if you're the Chargers and you're Eckler. So there's a lot of subjectivity in any rankings, but this is kind of the same deal where I'm not really checking market value. Like I'm looking at market value as a reference, but in the end, I'm still thinking, if I'm trading for Austin Eckler, what am I expecting to give up? Or if somebody wants Austin Eckler, what am I expecting to sell? And tier 5 is, what was it? Those two first minus. So it's definitely like, I definitely wouldn't go any lower. So he probably could go up, but we're right back into where do I think he's going to be then in a year. And the vibe that was going on between him and the Chargers over this past offseason just makes me really wonder if he's going to be somewhere else. Is he going to get used, at all like he has been with the Chargers? And I don't know if he goes anywhere else. I don't know. Like his usage can't go up, but can it even stay the same? I think. I think it could, but like. What is he? Is he 28 now, or is he 27 now?
Yeah, he's 28, and Chubb is 27.
Yeah, so he's 28 now. Nick Chubb. The reason for the discrepancy there is that I really kind of think Nick Chubb's career could go the way of Derrick Henry, where Henry was 29 last year, and he got hurt, but he was still putting up a lot of numbers because he was still like. He was getting used a lot too. Where I think he's always been getting used a little more than Nick Chubb, but Chubb's another one of these runners where, like, for the past 3, 4, 5 years, the conversation has been who's the best pure runner, and it's Nick Chubb or Derrick Henry. And so in Nick Chubb's particular case, that's another one of those kind of outlier things. Is like now he's 27, he should be declining. Derrick Henry, when he was 27, should he have been declining? I know he's like, he's built like a beast. So Nick Chubb isn't quite built like a Derrick Henry, where like Henry can just go out there and take 30 carries and take the punishment and be totally fine. But that's another one of those, where are the outliers at? And Nick Chubb gives me more outlier vibes than most. So that's the subjectivity of that angle again in there. And maybe that's too much subjectivity going into the value, but that was also a little bit of thinking that the Browns might be able to keep him around too, compared to Eckler, who, as difficult as it was to try to get a multi-year contract for Eckler, like what's going to happen with that? Is another team going to come along and swipe him up? And hard to see his usage going up for sure, but even staying the same. Like, what situation is he getting into where he's going to be utilized like he has been with the Chargers?
Yeah, I had in my just very basic rankings, Eckler is a little higher. But I mean, he could. You're right, Dane. He could retire next year. He's expressed a little bit of disdain with the Chargers organization. Maybe playing under Kellen Moore will light a fire under his ass, rejuvenate his love for the game of football to a new level. But he's to the point where, yeah, he could call it quits. He could hang it up, I don't know. I like both those guys. I don't know if I would have Eckler that far away from Chubb, however.
Yeah, I mean, my logic was basically like, I'd rather have Eckler for this year, and I think the age gap is actually less than a year. And Chubb, like, may be back with the Browns next year, but they could get out of his contract. It looks like for $4 million, for $4 million in dead cap after this year. So I just wasn't confident enough, and like, there's obviously a lot of things that could happen in either situation, but just given that I would prefer Eckler this year, I don't think there's like enough of a gap in future situation that I would have Chubb over him.
Yeah, it might just be too much of that. I might be aligning him with Derrick Henry's career arc too much, but that's the guessing game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously either one of them could last a lot longer, but I have no idea who it's going to be. So I weighted future, or like this coming year production heavier there.
Sure.
We got any other spots? We got them here.
I don't. Outside of the quarterback, the ones we touched on earlier, I don't think I had much.
Yeah.
You have Luke Schoonmaker ahead of Jake Ferguson in the Dallas tight end room. Not a fan of that, by the way.
Just tear them all down.
Yeah,
take them off the site. Man.
No, I don't. I've been building mine on an Excel sheet while I wait for Fantasy Pros to give me the go ahead. And
how long has that been, man? Have you again, or?
I did not since I told you I did that first time, but either way, I started off just listing all the guys, and then when I spoke to you, Dane, you were like, well, I've got mine in the trade tiers now, and so trying to do that and then fold all the tiers on top of themselves, it's been interesting. So this is a nice little accomplishment here, getting this all updated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll see. Hasn't been touched for a minute, so once we creep up to real close to the season, man, I hope you got some rankings coming out. We got to get that going before week 1 at least.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's it for me.
Yeah, I think I'm out of material. Jackson, did you bring anything with you to mull over?
Don't have anything else, but yeah, it was fun to talk about all this stuff. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Yeah, we'll keep making our rounds, and we'll see what happens next week or in 2 weeks. So we were trying to get a set time going there, but you know what? It'll be fine. So thank you for joining us, and we don't have anything set up. We'll hopefully get at least one more going before the season starts. So we'll see what happens. And thank you for joining us on the RSJ Dynasty Dive. As always, we're here to keep your minds churning and your values fresh, or at least attempt to. We have good intentions. Any last words from you, Emery?
No, I hope to have my rankings out by the start of the season. So look forward to that. We will be going through them at some point, but then once the season starts, I'm sure that we'll be breaking down just sort of like performances and reflecting back on your initial list versus where things have moved. So looking forward to that too.
And Jackson, anything you got coming up real recently here, besides the RSJ mock draft articles that we're going to be coming out with?
That's right. I did the auction series. That's up on the website, and then I'll just be doing weekly trade value charts and then expected fantasy point stuff during the season. And
they're very much appreciated by staff and viewers, both. So that's it. Wolfpack. I don't know if I should do my wolf routine here. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. It helps us reach out to more people. Yada, yada, yada. Thank you. And you know what? We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.